I've been dreading this day for a long time now, and it's finally here. I'm gonna have to redo how Noia handles character animations from the ground up. Let's get into this. The way Noia handles animations currently is through sprite-based animation. You have these large sprite sheets, which are just individual drawings of the character performing an action one frame at a time. And you have to redraw the character for each individual frame. Here's what that looks like in action. You can see here that the swinging of a sword is just 4 images played quickly, one after another. Here's what it looks like from the side. This would be a horizontal slice to the right. And then we can show you what it looks like to walk down as well. Now you might be thinking, how do you make it so you're holding a weapon? Or what does it look like when you put on armor? This is what the sword looks like when it's drawn and overlaid on top of the existing sprite sheet. You can see they line up. Here's what it looks like in the code. Each individual frame of the player character has a name to it, say right/1. Well, in code, all it has to do is match the name of that frame and search for it in the frames of animation given in the weapon that you're holding. So if there's a frame called right/1 on the character and it matches the name of a frame called right/1 on the weapon, they both play at the same time. Thus you have an overlaid effect. Now the code that's here is actually a very elegant solution. It works incredibly well for what it's designed to do. The problem is I can't use sprite-based animations for everything, and the reason is math. If I want to create 10 different attacks for swords, and I have 10 different colored swords, and each frame of the attack is 4 frames in 4 different directions, that comes out to 1,600 frames of animation that I cannot draw. So we need a better way of doing this, and the solution is to go half and half. We're going to do half sprite-based animation and half what's called bone-based animation. The concept of mixing these two animation styles is not new by any means, but where I first got the idea was watching Game Endeavor on YouTube. It's a fantastic channel, you should absolutely go check him out. But you can see that the body of the player is sprite-based animation, while the sword that he's swinging is just a static image of a sword that swings around using his mouse. So the first thing that I need to do is cut down this sprite sheet to the bare minimum. And that's going to be the 16 individual walking frames, up, down, left, and right. I'm going to be using these to do armor, but not weapons. So each individual armor piece will have 16 frames of animation, but for the most part, I don't need to redraw them, I just need to move them. This also means that I'm going to have to redo the entire blend tree system here as well. Right now, every single skill is set as a trigger here that, when set to true in game, triggers the animation to fire. Well, right now every single attack animation just plays the default basic attack animation, and I'm going to have to change that so each individual skill has their own individualized animations. First thing that I need to do is make this thing stop looking for animation names when it comes to weapons and just make it render the single sprite of the weapon itself. That was easy. All I have to do is set this boolean to true, and it'll only render one image the entire time. As a very rough proof of concept, I made a very basic walking down animation holding the single frame of the sword. Well, it appears to work just fine. Up and sideways have no animation, so the sword just sits there, but concept works. Now to redo this blend tree. If every single weapon is going to have its own unique animation style, it's going to go looking from this to looking more like this. In the future, each individualized weapon attack animation will go in its respective weapon column here in the blend tree. Now, we have a problem, and that is that the weapon is rendered over the player's hands. And unfortunately, because the player model is all one single image, I can't change the render order to put the weapon in the player's hands. So we're gonna have to take off the hands. What we have to do is actually remove the hands and then re-add them back in, and instead of adding them as sprite-based animations, we're going to be using now bone-based animations, very similar to how we're doing the weapons. This way we can render the hands in front of the weapons and the weapons in front of the body. This also means that I had to create a player model that had no arms. And if you've ever wanted to see a naked player model without any arms, it looks like this. Go ahead, get all the jokes out. I'll wait. I also had to create a custom sub-animator that would pass the player data to it so that the animator knew what direction the player was facing in order to properly display which way the hands should be facing. Here's a comparison of the before and after. I really do like the floating hands a lot better than the full shoulders and arms version of the sprite model. It lends itself a lot more to the cartoony feel of the game. I also ran into some issues with the larger looking weapons when they were viewed from the side. I just couldn't get them to look right no matter how I stretched or skewed them. So in the end, I decided I was going to need to make a forward and side view of the weapon. A pixel artist I am not, but I understand the basics, and if I just slice out the core of this sword here, it will essentially look like a profile view of it. And just like the hands, I had to create a custom sub-animator for the weapon now to handle whether or not it has one frame or 2 frames of animation, the first being the front view and the second being a profile view. Now that the code and the art part was done, I could focus on creating the animation of the left and right walking using the greatsword. And once I had that all fine-tuned, I was able to see it in game. It looked pretty okay. I think I'll change the side view to always be behind the character, no matter what, just to give a better perspective. And that's it. All the walking weapon animations are done. A lot of it was me tweaking decimal points behind the scenes, so this video is actually a lot shorter, despite having probably the most work put into it so far. And at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, we got a little fashion show for you to see of all the different weapon types that are going to be in Noia. We'll see you next time.